children asked Pope Francis a prayer that can be prayed at any time. Then Pope Francis took a small book of the Stations of the Cross and said, "The Stations of the Cross is not a prayer that can be prayed only during the Lenten period. It can be prayed at any time." During this year's Lenten period, in the homilies, our Holy Father Pope Francis had devised few special intentions for all those who are suffering from the corona pandemic. Let us together contemplate on these intentions with the way of the cross and pray together.
The first station, Jesus is condemned to death. There Jesus stood, bleeding, physically beaten and innocent. He was being condemned to horrible execution because of a paranoid and weak Roman leader. Many of the people who were present at this unfair trial were those who walked with Jesus and were moved by his teachings and miracles. But now they stood silent as an innocent man was led away to be cruelly executed as a common criminal. Jesus, we too have been condemned innocently as we experience the fear and concern caused by the coronavirus. Life as we know it a couple of weeks ago has changed. Church services have been cancelled, schools closed, businesses are shut down, people are dying and the virus is spreading. Like Jesus, we are caught in a crisis we have no control over. Give us the courage and love you showed as you willingly accepted an unfair verdict. Help us not to be silent, but rather turn to prayer before all those who have died or have contracted the virus.
The second station, Jesus carries his cross. The cross Jesus carries is heavy. He has been weakened by physical abuse and torturous scourging. He accepts the weight of the cross. Around him, there are shouts of insults and mockery. Despite the angry crowd's decision, Jesus begins his painful walk to Calvary. Jesus, you showed so much courage as you carried the cross. Help us these days to accept the uncertainty and disruptions of our daily lives caused by the coronavirus. Help us to speak words of hope in the midst of fear. Help us to turn to prayer for those who actually suffer from the virus. We need to reassure each other that together we can face this crisis and eventually find a cure. We are not
The third station, Jesus falls the first time under the cross. Already weakened, he finds the weight of the cross overwhelming. Jesus collapses. Getting up is difficult, but he is determined to complete his journey to Calvary. He doesn't have to, but he gets up to show that he loves us. In the midst of jeering and insults, he embraces the cross and continues. Jesus, you showed us the power of love and commitment. Help us these days to endure the difficult times we live in. So much is going on and we feel a sense of disorientation. Give us the grace to support each other. Give us the grace not to let the weight of our concerns and fears keep us from being people of faith and hope. And all other essential workers, help us to be aware of those who may be overwhelmed with the weight of this virus and to trust that you are with us always.
The fourth station, Jesus meets his afflicted mother. We can only imagine the sorrow Mary felt when she encountered her son, bruised, beaten, struggling the weight of the cross. She heard the bloodthirsty cries of the spectators along the road. How hard was it for Jesus to see his mother so distraughted and helpless. They could only share their agony in silence. Jesus, we know that you see the suffering and confusion of this world, which is in great turmoil. Many have died from the virus, while many are suffering from it, and others are in the fear of contracting it. May our eyes and your eyes meet and bring us reassurance that all will be fine. May we look up to you for hope and strength. Amen.
The fifth station. Simon of Cyrene is forced to take up his cross. We do not know much about this man called Simon. He was just passing by and was forcibly made to carry the cross for Jesus. This was not done out of compassion for the suffering of Jesus, but rather because the soldiers didn't want Jesus to die before reaching the place of execution. Jesus, during these days of unprecedented precautions that are changing our daily lives, keep us from depression, help us to do our part in carrying the weight of so much disruption in our parishes and communities. We are all asked to make sacrifices in order to lift the burden and slow the spread of this virus. Praying for each other and supporting the efforts needed to erase this pandemic will make us all remember we are the body of Christ.
Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. What a courageous and compassionate woman. She saw a human being suffering and reached out with an act of kindness. We do not know if she knew Jesus personally. All we know is that she offered dignity and comfort to a suffering man, while others mocked and insulted Jesus. She did what she could do to let him know he was not alone. Jesus, these days, help us to remember the thousands of Veronicas who are working hours and hours to help control the pandemic. They are nurses, doctors, first responders, international, national, and local government officials. Help them find the way to end this health emergency. Keep them safe.
Seventh station. Jesus falls a second time. Even without the heavy weight of the cross, Jesus falls a second time. Each step on this road to Calvary has been filled with agonizing pain. You might imagine Jesus might have been tempted to stay down, but his love for us was so great, he struggled to his feet and continued towards his destination. Jesus, the road we are walking these days is so new and uncertain. It is so difficult to live in isolation. It is so unsettling as we wonder when things might return to normal. We miss gathering for Eucharist and being nourished by your word and sacrament. Help us not to stay down in worry, but help us to stand up and walk in faith.
The eighth station. Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. Along that dusty road to Calvary, Jesus encounters some women of Jerusalem who are weeping as they see him struggling along. Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but for yourselves and for your children. Jesus seems to be telling them not to worry for him. He knows his destiny. He wants them to take care of each other so that they may not grieve like those who have no hope. Jesus, there are many of your sons and daughters who are weeping these days. Some have watched their dear ones die. Others are at high risk due to the virus, and yet others who are losing jobs and savings. Help us to be the instrument of compassion. Let our prayers be not only for ourselves, but also for others who are in need of our love and support.
Ninth station. Jesus falls the third time. Will this be his last and final fall? What great love he must have for us to once again get up and continue. There is no hope that at the last minute he will be given a reprieve once he arrives at Calvary. Nevertheless, he continues, putting aside pain, doubt and fear. He says yes to the will of his Father. Jesus, when will this health crisis end? We are growing weary as each day seems to bring us more bad news. The isolation and social distance is so hard. Our children are feeling cabin fever and are uncertain about when normalcy will return. Give us strength not to fall under the weight of discouragement, but rather bring us all together as we lift each other up and move forth in trust.
10th station. Jesus is stripped off his garments. Jesus had reached Calvary. Now he must face the indignity of being stripped off his bloody clothing. He came into this world with nothing and soon will be leaving with nothing. But this cruel act could not strip Jesus' love for us. He accepted this humiliation and opened his arms to be nailed to the cross. Jesus, the coronavirus has stripped us of so many things. The celebration of the Eucharist, work, school, entertainment and human contact. Help us to see that all these precautions can be tolerated as an act of love. Help us to understand that making these sacrifices will help save lives, stop the spread of the virus, and bring a faster end to this pandemic.
Eleventh station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. As the nails are cruelly pounded into Jesus' hands and feet upon the cross he carried, could he have been thinking, "My people, what have I done to deserve this? Why such anger toward me? I spent my whole life loving you. Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." Jesus, we are tempted these days to also ask, what have we done to deserve this? Reassure us that the answer is nothing. Help us to always remember that you are a God of love, not revenge and punishment. You are a God of mercy. You are a God of healing. We stretch out our arms to help each other through prayer and trust, to always remember that you have not abandoned us.
Jesus dies on the cross. Even as Jesus hangs on the cross, he is still proclaiming his message of mercy and hope. He forgives the repentant thief and says, "Today you will be in paradise." He cries out, "I thirst," for the salvation of all of us. Jesus proclaims his trust in the Father and says, "Into your hands I commend my spirit." Jesus loved us till the end. Jesus, we thirst for the end of this worldwide virus. In our fear and concern, help us to place ourselves in your hands. as we feel nailed to this heavy cross of living in a pandemic. Remind us of the resurrection. We will rise from this moment. Deepen our faith, lead us in hope, and let charity guide our every day. Into your hands we commend our troubled spirit.
The 13th station. Jesus is placed in the arms of his mother. There is no greater sorrow for a mother or father than the death of a son or daughter. Our Blessed Virgin Mary was not spared the sorrow. She witnessed her son's horrible death and could do nothing about it. We can only imagine the pain she felt as she embraced Jesus' lifeless body. She was truly the sorrowful mother. Jesus, there are so many mothers and fathers, sons and daughters that are crying at the loss of a loved one during this coronavirus pandemic. We call on our Mother to hold in her hands these grieving families during this difficult time. Help us remember that we are all in this time together, and it will be together that we will find strength and hope.
Station. Jesus is laid in the tomb. This is the last station, but this is not the end of the story. 3 days later, Jesus is raised from the dead as he promised. Death was defeated. Christ has died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. This is the good news that we profess as Christians even at this time. Jesus, we want to believe that things will soon get better. Our work during this pandemic continues to be our way of the cross. We ask that you place Simons on our path to help lighten our burden, Veronicas to remind us of our dignity as humans, men and women to hear our cries of concern, and faith to believe we will rise from this dark.
Easter teaches us believers do not linger at the graveyards, for they are called to go meet the living one, which is why it is necessary to know where we are going in our lives. Sometimes we only go in the direction of our problems, digging up regressions, reproaches, hurts, and dissatisfactions, and search for the living one among the dead, and to not allow the risen one change us. Dear friends, we must not be carried by the current sea of our problems. We must seek the risen one in everything and above all things, because with him we will rise again.